and welcome to Voices and Vibes Alumni Edition, the official podcast of the IFUMSA Alumni Relations Committee, where we bring you raw, unfiltered conversations with remarkable men and women who once walked the halls of Great Ife Medicine and are now shaping lives across the globe. I am your host, Amarachi Godso-Wankwo, and it is my pleasure to bring you the premiere episode of this podcast series. And what better way to launch this series than with an esteemed leader whose story has echoed through IFUMSA for years, Dr. Akinwale Iyeku, popularly known as Dr. Tansi. He's a former IFUMSA Assistant General Secretary, a former IFUMSA President, and most impressively, the best graduating student of his set. And now he is a trailblazing internal medicine resident and fellow at the University of Wisconsin, Madison. We are honored to have you with us, Dr. Akinwale Iyeku. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. So, Dr. Tansi, can we get to know you? Who is Dr. Tansi? Who is Dr. Akinwale Iyeku?
Well, thank you for that question. I describe myself in different ways, but most importantly, I am a husband. I am a dad to two boys. I also see myself as Nigerian. It's a core part of my identity. Occupation-wise, I'm a physician. I'm currently a senior internal medicine resident at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So all of this kind of like play into who I am. So yeah, that's who I am.
That's a fantastic profile. You're kicking it both in career, family. I mean, you have such a beautiful life going on there. And it's so great to meet you, sir. So you served as both AGS and president of IFUMSA, and that speaks to your leadership prowess. But when people hear about IFUMSA president or AGS, they often think of power and maybe a fancy title. But I know personally from your track record that that's not what it's about for you. So tell us, we would love to hear your story. What drew you to leadership when you were an IFUMSA?
Yeah, thank you. So I have always been interested in helping people, serving people, coordinating people together to achieve a common goal. As far back as when I was a young teenager, I was like in the leadership of the youth in my church, and so those were my formative years. Coming to Ife Medical School, I was at the IFUMSA orientation. I heard a couple of the current leaders at that time when I heard them speaking. Particularly, one of them stood out to me, Dr. Adeyemi. He was the IFUMSA president at that time. I was really drawn to how articulate he was and how passionate about the IFUMSA he sounded at that time. And that's one of the things that drew me to IFUMSA. The thing about IFUMSA then, and I hope it is still now, is that it's like a body of not just students, but extremely intelligent people, very talented people. And when I say talent, I mean in different walks of life, who all just happen to be in medical school at the same time. So I saw in IFUMSA a lot of resources that can be garnered together to like achieve certain goals. And so I began by volunteering to be on the SRB in my class at the end of first year, and then subsequently became the AGS after an election. And I think you know the rest of the story. So I felt that IFUMSA offered a lot of like opportunities to essentially bring people together to achieve goals that can help us as individuals and also help the community where we were schooling. And that's what drew me to IFUMSA.
Oh, that's a very, very inspiring story to know how it started with, seeing what other people were doing and also deciding to be a part of that legacy and contributing to keeping the IFUMSA community strong as we know it to be. And I mean, you did such a fantastic job. I think I got to hear as well that it was during your tenure that we were able to get the IFUMSA bus. So I mean, you being a part of the strong legacy that we've been building for the past 50 years, and it's fantastic, really. So reflecting on your journey from coming into medical school and getting exposed to all of the information and the resources, and then all through medical school, your leadership journey, your academic journey, what's a piece of wisdom or a key lesson from your student days that you still apply today in your professional life? And looking back, what did IFUMSA mean to you in shaping the person that you are today?
Yeah, so thank you. So one key piece of wisdom that I think formed the IFUMSA way of life then for us as students, and I hope even until now, is the concept of medicine plus. I think we even had a program like that maybe in my second or third year where we were like medicine plus something.
Doctor
like
plus.
Something else. Yeah, doctor plus. Yeah, something like that. So that's a concept that helped me through medical school, and I think still applies today to my professional life. The idea that you should be a great medical student as much as you can, put in a lot of hard work, but also do something in addition to that, do something extra, do something more. And I think that's a piece of wisdom that IFUMSA gave me and has been helping me until now. If I can add another one, I think it's also the concept of giving more than you expect back. And that is from whatever community or society you find yourself in, trying to put more into the community bank, so to speak, than what you expect back from where it is you are. And it could be where you're working or where you're studying or whatever committee or community you find yourself in, the idea that you should give more. And this giving more is what informed some of the things we did as the IFUMSA leaders then, I think we had, one of the things we had then was the Save Our Teachers movement, which was as simple and basic as going from office to office outside of health sciences complex, going to social sciences, law, other places, and just talking to lecturers in those areas, checking their blood pressures, checking their random blood sugars, and just giving them some basic health advice. That was us giving to the community. There are also villages around Ife that we would organize and go for outreaches, and I'm sure that you guys still do those as well. Go for outreaches, try to get resources such as mosquito or insect repellent nets, go into the villages, educate people about their health, check their blood pressure. Again, things that don't cost a lot of money, but can be really impactful for people, especially people that have limited access to healthcare. So the concept of giving more than you expect back is something I learned a lot from IFUMSA. Then also the idea of building things together, and that goes again back into why I became active in IFUMSA in the first place. All of the things that we achieved while I was AGS or IFUMSA President could certainly not have been possible if we didn't have the members of a team who were pushing for things to happen. And the idea of sacrificing just so you can achieve a common goal is something that I really learned and demonstrated while I was in IFUMSA. For example, we were able to, like you mentioned, we were able to get the IFUMSA bus at that time through like hours and hours of fundraising. Like I remember working overnight with the IFUMSA General Secretary at that time, the Health Week chairman at that time, Ali Morenikeji and Rashid Olatunji, like writing emails, calling people, traveling to Lagos to meet people, just to be sure that we could do this. I mean, I remember that we were also able to get mattresses for the Obimbe hostel in Ilesha. And it was even at that time, under the leadership of Professor Fatusi, that we were also able to kickstart or join, passionately, like advocate for the medical student hostel in Wesley Guild Hospital. And that was when that project started at that time. So yeah, to recap, the idea of medicine plus something, the idea of like giving more than what you expect back, and yeah, the concept of building things together with like-minded people.
Wow, this is super fantastic. And like it seems like the IFUMSA that you had back then is still the IFUMSA that we have currently, because those concepts, they are still very much alive up until now. They are still, they're still vibrant. They are still, they are still here in our community. But I think the biggest question that we ask very often as students, and it would be something I would love to, everybody listening to this would definitely love to hear from you, especially because you have long graduated from school, you have gone through years of training and masters and all of these, and you're a seasoned professional, if I may. All of these things you've mentioned, from medicine plus to giving more than you expect from your community to building things together. How do we can encapsulate them as the IFUMSA experience? How do this experience equip doctors for the world outside the four walls of classroom? What does it translate to? Like, what relevance is it for us at the end of the day when we leave the school environment, when we graduate? How does it impact our career, the trajectory of our lives afterwards? Or should I maybe ask, like, how has it impacted yours after graduation?
Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, I don't think of myself as a seasoned professional yet, but thank you anyway. So, regarding your question, IFUMSA experience was great for me, and overall, like, learning in Ife, like, gave me a solid foundation in terms of medical knowledge, which forms the foundation of every other thing I did afterwards until today. But beyond that, participating in the student life actively in IFUMSA also like built me up for some of the other attributes that have helped me so far. I think the thing about IFUMSA, I don't know if we still have the long hours of overnight SRB meetings and executive council meetings up till today, but they were a big deal back then, like more than 10, 11, 12 years ago. The fact that we were students, obviously, and what we're doing, we were passionate about. And the fact that you were able to leave anything else you were doing, maybe like something else you enjoyed doing, maybe watching a football match or just hanging out with friends, and come, dress formally, sit down for hours and deliberate cerebrally with your colleagues, and come up with ways to solve problems, even spanning overnight meetings, is something that I think that level of discipline that we got from there was really helpful. The fact that you're able to disagree, to agree, without breaking decorum, as we would call it that time in the parliament, is a really great skill. Unfortunately, a lot of people, nowadays, are not able to have great conversations and disagree and have opposing views without resorting to like unpleasant means. So it was something we learned over time in IFUMSA. Also, the altruism that was associated with. I don't know if we still do that nowadays in IFUMSA, but then there was supposed to be maybe a seating allowance that SRB honorable members would get for each of their sittings as part of IFUMSA's budget. But throughout my time in medical school, every time the annual budget is proposed by the executive branch, the SRB would always say, we will waive this seating allowance and we would not receive any seating allowance. And that was the culture. That was the culture all through medical school. And that's altruism, even though technically this is something that people should get, or other parliaments in the university was probably getting something like that. But as a tradition, we would say to each other in the SRB, we're doing this for the growth of our association and we just want to make things happen, and we would waive any form of remuneration. And that's something that has stuck to me till now as well. The other IFUMSA experience that has really been helpful, as we all know, medical school can be very rough. And the idea of trying your best to thrive even when the times are not optimal, even when things are not perfect, but trying to push along and trying to work through things is also another thing I learned outside of the four walls of the classroom. Then obviously, managing time. I think time is like our biggest resource as humans, and we only do things because we have the time for them, or we're able to make them happen in good time. So time management, I would say, is also one of the biggest ways the IFUMSA experience really helped and really does continue to help until now.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yes, we still have very long sittings up until now, even in the house. I'm a fourth-time honorable, and I don't think I've experienced a sitting that was less than a minimum of 10 hours. I think there was a time we had like a sitting run from about 6-7 p.m. on Friday till like 11 a.m. the next day, and I think that's the longest sitting I've experienced so far. But yes, we still have the culture. We are keeping the culture strong. And
good to hear that.
It's still like a practice that we have. We still don't get sitting allowance. We didn't even, up until now, I did not even know that was a thing. And I mean, the altruism and dedication to service is definitely the spirit that we've also continued to keep up even up until now. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, sir. I'm glad to know that the discipline that comes from being an active participant of the IFUMSA experience still pays off even after grad school, and these are things that still help us to stand out even when we've gone on to build our careers. So I mean, let's get to like the meat of the thing, where a lot of students, I'm very certain that a lot of students would definitely want to hear about. You mentioned time management. How did you balance being a student leader with excelling academically to becoming the best graduating student of your set? And I asked this question really from a very curious perspective, because medical school is not a small feat at all. Combining that with anything outside of academics is also not a small feat in itself. Now, getting to the top of both endeavors, both in the leadership space and in the academic space, it's something that is unique. It definitely stands out. So we would, I for me personally, and for everyone listening, we would love to know how you were able to pull that off, and how we too can learn from you and incorporate the things that you did into our own personal lives, especially for the capacity building people who are listening to this, people who are in the House and Parliament, Executive Council, doing MINSA, doing FUMSA. We would, on behalf of all of us and maybe other people who are doing things outside of maybe the leadership space, perhaps into business, they're into tech, they're freelancing, and all of that.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I could say it's something I did, but yeah. So, like you rightly said, medical school, I remember clearly, was tough. It required a lot from us, a lot of hours, a lot of dedication, and also something which maybe many of like student listeners may be able to relate to, which is the fear of failing. And so, and that fear even becomes more, and you can even like feel or hear it from some people or some of the teachers or some other students who might think that because you're very active in IFUMSA, you're not being serious or serious enough with your academics, or because you're actively pursuing this business or learning this skill that you like, that means you're just a bad medical student. Obviously, many students have proven this not to be true. Many people have succeeded in medical school while I was there and before my time to do great things outside of med school and still do well in medical school. Obviously, I think the biggest challenge or the biggest thing would have been time management. And time management is something that I had to evolve through. One of the styles that I think I really liked a lot was the Eisenhower matrix. And this is not to say that I use this all of the time, but it was something that helped me to categorize everything I had to do per day. First of all, my dad taught me to keep to-do lists. So I have always been like a big fan of like big and small to-do lists, pieces of paper everywhere, and to write out what you really want to do and by what time you need to do them. So that was easy for me to like build up on using the Eisenhower matrix. And we all probably know about it, but just to recap, it's about like dividing things into 4 quadrants based on 2 attributes of those things, of those to-do things. And that is, are they urgent or are they important? So ideally, I would try my best to say yes or no to each of those. And that gives you 4 categories, right? So obviously, if something is urgent and it's important, then that's almost like a crisis level thing that you need to do right now. Otherwise, things will go bad. But then the next thing would be if it's important but it's not urgent, right? It's something really important for you. As a student, obviously, studying would be important, right? But you have to go beyond just saying studying to like really appreciate how best to use this. And how I did it, which may work differently for other people, would be, okay, I really need to relearn gram-positive cocci in micropara. I need to read it again. And that's important because I have the end of posting exam in so weeks. So it's not urgent yet, but it's important. And you would note that I did not say I need to read micropara. I was very specific to myself and honest to myself about what topic I felt that I needed to read, because it helps me to conceptualize how long I probably needed to study it for. And that allows me to allocate the ideal amount of time that might be helpful. Then the other quadrant would be like, is this thing urgent but not important? And the last one would be obviously things that are not urgent and not important. which are also good things and maybe necessary, but it's just that in the hierarchy of things, the urgent and important things will be the top level. The catch is that you should arrange your to-do list and your daily tasks and your weekly tasks sometimes, or sometimes I even set monthly goals in such a way that fewer and fewer things fall under urgent and important. By that I mean that the important things should be taken care of before they become urgent. That way you free up the last minute time for things that would invariably always come up. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I did as a student. And like I said, I wish I could always say to people that this is exactly what I did and this is what you should do. But oftentimes that is not always the case. Another thing is that I always enjoyed teaching, and I still do till today. And that's because for me, teaching is something I could easily do without being paid to do. I just enjoy it. And beyond that also, teaching helps me to even understand the subject I'm teaching even further. And so it's not unusual for you to find me while I was in medical school organizing tutorial sessions. Before I was AGS, while I was AGS and chairman of the academic committee, and even subsequently, I would have conversations with people who were in younger classes, teach them something that I might have learned. And I think that really helped me because obviously medicine is a lot of knowledge, and sometimes we might struggle to put everything together. But I found that if I was a fifth year student and I was teaching a second year student in anatomy and physiology, I bring in a perspective from the clinical aspect of things, and it helps me to scaffold what I already know and put it all together well for me, especially when I'm preparing to give that talk. So I would very often go and teach people, and I often volunteer to teach even when I don't completely understand what I'm going to teach. But that drives me to try to read up more, try to look at things in a different perspective. And it's not even very rare that while I'm giving the talk or teaching, then a new connection just forms and I'm like, wow, this is really true. And I go ahead and teach it, even though I was just learning it right there and then. So if you're someone who likes to help others by teaching them, you might also be doing yourself a world of good as well. Another thing that maybe I did and maybe it helped was I really respect and love our teachers in Ife. They really pushed us to succeed, and they are extremely intelligent and extremely well accomplished people themselves. And one of the things that one of them had said to me at some point was, when we were younger, when we were medical students, we used to go back to the teaching hospital at nighttime, go back and plaque more patients, read through patients' case notes, speak to the patients, and learn some more. And potentially looking back, I think I took that advice too seriously, because in my clinical years, I lived very close to the hospital. And so sometimes when I just have the time, again, important but not urgent, I would go to the hospital, just read up case notes of patients that I was not following before, like patients I wasn't presenting before, because obviously you should know about the patients you're presenting on a rotation. But maybe other patients, maybe I was presenting a patient that has chronic liver disease, and there was this other patient that has heart failure, but it wasn't my patient. I would just go through to the medical notes, read about the patient, go and talk to the patient as well. And that way I have an idea about what's going on with them. And passively, I might have learned a thing or two about them. So I think those are some of the things that might have helped, but otherwise, I don't have a fix-it-all answer to your question, I'm afraid.
Oh, fantastic, really. To-do list, perfect. Like I use to-do list as well, and it's good to know that it's a die-hard principle that you practice. That gives me a lot of joy and hope. I hope it also works for me, and maybe one day I might become BKS. Who knows? And yes, I've seen HOA Matrix too. I've come across that matrix in one or two personal development books that I have read, but I have not really used it as much. So I should put that into practice. You mentioned teaching other people. I would perhaps ask a question just on that. For people who might not have the opportunity to teach other people, but still want to key into the teaching aspect to kind of like to reinforce whatever they know, what other tactics would you give them, or what would you say they can also explore as an alternative for that?
Yeah, so you mean if someone is not able in a position where they could teach other people?
Yeah.
Yes. So the first step, or the thing you could do while studying, also you could approach it as if you're explaining something to yourself or to your previous self while you're studying, like making notes as if you are going to like have a talk about this in the future to someone else. And sometimes when I'm reading a page of the textbook again, I may not even remember what was on the page, but I would be surprised to see what I've noted about that page, and that helps. The repetition helps a lot. So for people who might struggle with teaching, I would say some other things that some of my friends have used when I was in medical school was to approach the same topic from different aspects, like reading from different textbooks or different styles. Some people are like learners, like visual learners, as you probably know, while some people prefer to write it down themselves, maybe rewrite it. And some people are just okay with listening to things and they are fine with it. While some people do better with like a combination of some of these things. So yeah, it's about finding what works for you in a time efficient manner and making it work. One thing I forgot to mention earlier on about balancing things to do well academically was that invariably there have to be some sacrifices, unfortunately. It might come to a point where we might have to let some things go. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience. When I matriculated into Ife, I was very active in IFUMSA. I was also very active in the Catholic Students Association, the NFCS, and FECANS. I was like a member of the choir. But unfortunately, as I went ahead in medical school, became IFUMSA President and things like that, I had to let go something that was really, I really enjoyed doing. And that was the choir. I wasn't able to attend choir rehearsals as much as I would love to because I simply could just not fit it in. Partly because, as you probably know, a big chunk of our clinical years is done in Elisha, and also you get to work on nighttime and also work on weekends, which doesn't really work well with people who are not in the medical field in the university. So being in the choir, which was a very great choir, I hope it still is, was something I had to let go while I was a medical student. So there invariably will be some kind of sacrifice. You just have to let some things go and prioritize what is most important to you at some point. also there is this principle of like stepping back at some point. And we would often do this as well. Like sometimes when I was IFUMSA President, I would say to other members of the executives who potentially are having an in-course coming on or an exam coming on to like step back from all what we are doing, let the rest of us take over. And then when you're done and you feel you're in a good place academically, you can step back in and continue what you're doing. So because what we would say to each other then was that, yes, IFUMSA is great, but we need to be medical students so that we can continue to be members of IFUMSA. And that was, I would say, a bit harsh, but also it's good to like help remind ourselves about what's most important at that time. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, like, it speaks to the empathy and even to your leadership as the great leader that you are. And on the subject of sacrifice, discipline, and all of these virtues that we've spoken about, what is that one daily habit or daily practice that you recommend for students who are juggling heavy academics with leadership or even personal goals? Like, what is that thing that you live by, that, oh, every day this is something I have to do to keep everything put together, to keep the multiverse from falling apart, if I may use a superhero from Marvel? So what is that daily habit or daily practice that you go by?
Yeah, so I would say don't freestyle any day. Like, don't, yeah, and it could be tough really, but don't go into a day without having some to-do list of some things that you need to get done today. Don't, I would put it this way, try to take charge of what happens to you during the day and what you make happen during the day. At the risk of sounding like a motivational speaker, but try to have a game plan for each day. And it's not just the game plan that matters, it is the state of mind that goes into actively trying to design your day to meet your goals. I think that does something to how we think and approach problems. It gives you the idea that potentially, if you play the game well, and by the game I mean plan your day well, you potentially can achieve a lot with the 24 hours that you've got. So if there was one thing I would say as a daily habit is, for every day, try to have like a checklist of things that you should complete today. And it could be something like, today I need to write the introduction to this proposal that we're going to send to this funder. And also I need to finish this page or this number of pages on this textbook by the end of today. Then obviously I have classes to attend today. So those are fixed, right? But in addition to that, these are the two other things or things that I think would be good if I did them today. And I'm going to really work hard to it. Sometimes when I want to be mean, I put a time where I'm supposed to do that. By 2 p.m. I will have done this, or by 3 p.m. I will have done this. So I think, yes, go into each day using it for what it is, like a resource, and have a game plan to use the resource.
Fantastic. This reminds me of the first principle in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers. I have never read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but I've always loved the teenagers version of it by Sean Covey, and it talks about being proactive. And he basically just encourages us to take personal responsibility for how our decisions and our actions shape our lives and our destinies, rather than just leaving it to external factors. And I think for a place like medical school that is extremely demanding, and especially for people who then want to combine this with other things, being proactive and having a game plan, in your terminology, kind of sets you up for being in charge and dictating how like your day goes, how your work goes, and generally just how your life goes. And I think that's fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I agree with you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take one step back to our previous conversation about your leadership journey, and then we'll go forward to discuss about your journey after our graduation, because we've spoken so much about your time in medical school. And while we want to ensure that this conversation is super helpful for students in terms of their day-to-day activities in school, we also want to make sure that there is early exposure to postgrad conversations as well, and also ensure that these conversations are also relevant to our alumni members. So I'm just going to take that step back and ask this question. For students, we've probably come across people who feel like, leadership, capacity building, IFUMSA, I think it's going to take too much time. It's going to cost me too much. What do you have to say to students who feel like leadership or the IFUMSA experience, as it were, might cost them their academics or their peace, from your own perspective?
So, yes, I'm probably biased because of how active I was as in extracurriculars as a medical student. But yeah, my answer to that is simple. You can do things. You can excel in your extracurricular activities as a medical student. And if you excel at that, it does speak well of you as well. The thing about medical school is that we are all here together and we are all being prepared to become doctors, right? But eventually, the goal is to all become doctors. But beyond that, there will be this unspoken, unwritten requirement of Doctor Plus or Medicine Plus. And if that comes up, what would you have to offer? I know that people struggle, and I don't want to claim ignorance of that. Like, it's very commonplace to struggle with things, especially academically, and that's reality as well. But I think that there is always a way to find something in addition to medicine that you are doing, because it helps and it is more realistic than medical school. And what do I mean by that? As doctors, which medical school is training you to be, there is no one who is there's no one who is a doctor in isolation, right? You're going to be a doctor and maybe a daughter or a son to your parents, or maybe a spouse to your spouse, or, and a parent as well. And all of those things need time and planning and sacrifice and everything we've just talked about. So, but then you cannot then say, hey, since I started becoming a doctor, I am no longer your son, or I'm no longer your husband. I am now just a doctor because that's all I have time to be in order to be a good one. No, it's all still about like time planning. And so I think that being involved in other things such as leadership in medical school, or business, or like you said, other forms of capacity building in medical school is a good test run of trials and errors and how to make things work when you need to be more than one person, which is the way the real life works. And you don't get it all at once. You learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You learn your own style. It is by stretching yourself and undergoing these additional responsibilities that you truly realize how much you're able to take on. There's this saying about tasks or time expanding to fill in all the tasks you need to achieve, or tasks expanding to fill in all the time you've got. So you might think that you truly do not have extra time, but that 1 or 2 hours per week you're able to volunteer on the academic committee to teach, or that 1 or 2 hours. I remember when we wanted to start the process of having the IFUMSA synopsis. The synopsis idea came to me as like just a piece of paper or a couple of pieces of paper where we could just like write some of the top things that people needed to learn about, say, pediatrics or OBGYN, and just give it to people. So I went to my president at that time, Dr. Mobude, and I told him about this, and I was like, no, this can actually be better than just a few pieces of paper. We can actually get residents, like registrars and senior registrars, and even some of the consultants and the senior medical students in 5th year and 6th year to all pitch in and work on this together. And I was like, that's going to take a lot of time to actually design and write up a book. And he told me, no, if you talk to people, have a big team, and even if it's just 1 or 2 hours per week, they are able to sit down and write out things that was going to be helpful. And so I remember going to meet the IFUMSA Quiz Club chairman at that time. And he was really open to that idea. And that's how we have this series called IFUMSA Synopsis today. So even if it's just 1 hour or 2 hours you're able to give per week to this new hobby or this new passion that you're developing, maybe leadership, maybe teaching, maybe volunteering, or maybe just working in IHAC or working in the quiz club or the Ife Medicine club. With time, you will be able to expand your horizon to be able to take in that additional hours that you are doing. And those 2 hours you're volunteering per week is not what is essentially going to make you fail in medical school, but rather it's going to make you even a much stronger person.
Thank you so much for sharing that, sir. This reminds me of the power of compounding interest, and how our activities and actions and steps and decisions compound over time. And I think when we think about it from a time perspective, like, okay, I'm dedicating 2 hours per week, it makes it so much more manageable than trying to embrace like that overwhelming feeling of the 1,001 things we need to do at once, or maybe, okay, what's this going to be like in the next 5 years? And this again reminds me that sometimes all that matters is just taking that small step bit by bit. I feel like sometimes we get all caught up in planning every aspect or trying to figure out what it would look like over a very long stretch of time, that we kind of like just get overwhelmed by the whole thought of it, and then we kind of like pull back. And I think this perspective reminds me once again that sometimes just showing up bit by bit, adding up all of that experience counts at the end of the day, as opposed to trying to do all of it at once. So thank you very much.
Yes, it all adds up.
Yeah, thank you. So now we're moving on to the journey after graduation. I'd love to hear all about the career progression. You have such a fantastic profile. Anyone who takes even a minute to look at your LinkedIn alone would be blown away. And I would really love to hear your story and have you walk us through all of that. So, you've earned a master's of philosophy in medicine at Cambridge. Wow, that's like an Ivy League school. And now you're practicing internal medicine. You're a senior resident. What inspired your journey to pursue a master's? What was that journey like, pursuing the master's, moving then to practice to do your residency in internal medicine? What has the journey looked like for you? Can you just walk us through the entire process and what it's been like over the years since graduation?
Yeah, Thank you for that question. Before I answer, I just want to put out a disclaimer that like careers are so personal to different people, and so invariably all of us would work different career paths, but there will be similarities and potentially one or two things to learn from one another. So after med school, obviously I did my housemanship and also served the country, served Nigeria in the NYSC. But one of the things I saw in medical school was that there was, or there maybe still is, a lot of attention being placed on infectious diseases in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole, as well as maternal health as well, which are extremely helpful and life-saving. A lot of funds are being put into like prevention of communicable diseases and prevention of maternal mortality as well, which is fantastic and great work. But one thing I also noticed was that when it comes to Africa or Nigeria, not a lot of people were thinking, at least at that time, or talking about non-communicable diseases, or what was referred to at that time as double burden of diseases. For example, I think I mentioned earlier on that we would go around talking to people about cancers, about diabetes, about hypertension, about heart disease. And many people didn't even know what their blood pressure readings were like, or if they were hypertensive or not. And so I saw an unmet need there. And so I wanted to learn better how to approach this epidemiologically or research-wise, how to be able to collect and interpret basic data, but not necessarily in the traditional public health perspective, which was like a very big thing at that time. A lot of our friends and contemporaries were really into masters in public health and are still into that, which is fantastic. But I wanted something that was a bit more research driven, like similar to a doctor of philosophy or a PhD. A master of philosophy is like a step down from that, and it's majorly like a research-based degree. And so thankfully, I was able to secure a funded scholarship to Cambridge to carry out my Master of Philosophy thesis, which focused on left ventricular hypertrophy in newly diagnosed hypertensives. And so I finished that, and then COVID started, but thankfully I'd already written my exams to practice as a doctor in the UK. And so because it was COVID, everyone was scared. They really needed doctors. So I started working in the NHS at that time. And by exams, I'm sure you know, I meant like PLAB 1 and PLAB 2. So I already had my license and I was working as a senior house officer in the NHS. Also, at that time, I began to think of taking things a step further. And so I registered to write the Royal College of Physicians postgraduate exams, the Part 1 and the Part 2 and the BASIS. And thankfully, I was over the subsequent years able to pass the MRCP exams, getting the diploma of the Royal College of Physicians of the United Kingdom. But then I figured that I wanted to obviously do postgraduate clinical training, because clinical medicine is something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy the time in the hospital. I enjoy the time talking to patients. I enjoy physically examining patients and getting them better with medications. And so I also enjoy treating people who have complex illnesses, sifting through their signs and symptoms and arriving at diagnosis and rolling out differentials. that sounds really nerdy, but it's something that I really enjoy doing. And so naturally, internal medicine was always was a good way to go. I should confess that earlier on, I really thought I was going to be a pediatrician, which is similar to internal medicine in the philosophy. But then when I became a house officer, I probably overestimated my ability to cope with sick children, and it was something I was just not emotionally able to cope with. So I pivoted into internal medicine naturally. So I think that walking through my career again, as you asked, I then enrolled at Cardiff University. Again, going back to my passion or my love for teaching that I mentioned earlier on when I was on IFUMSA, I enrolled at Cardiff University for a postgraduate certification in medical education, just to formally learn the basics of teaching, the philosophies of teaching, various adult learning theories to solidify some of these things that I was interested in. I kind of figured that training in the US was the best next step to take. And so I wrote the USMLE steps as well, and then matched into residency training at the US. And my next goal, as you probably can tell from why I did my master's degree, is to eventually go into cardiology or cardiovascular diseases. So you might have figured out that from all of this, I probably was doing one or two or three things at the same time to be able to go through some of these things. And that's because of one of the things I've learned from IFUMSA as well, being able to do two or three things at the same time. I was also getting married. I was trying to build our family together with my wife. And like I said earlier on, there is really no time in adulthood where you would only be doing just one thing. You're always going to have to involve some leadership, some other sacrifices, as well as your career. And I think in some ways, IFUMSA really helped me with that, with this ability to, hey, I'm writing MRCP Part 1, but I'm also thinking about writing USMLE Step 1, and I'm also submitting an assignment to my PG cert in medical education all at the same time. And that really, really helped. So that's a summary of my career after graduation so far.
Your entire story tells something. If I were to wrap it up into two things, I would say number one is that I can see how passionate you are about learning. You are super passionate about learning and gaining new knowledge and just generally becoming a more knowledgeable person in your field. And I cannot but imagine what that has done in terms of making you a more experienced physician, a better clinician, and overall just a great doctor, really. And then of course, there's also this theme of grief, this theme of resilience, of perseverance, and that really stands out to me because it means that for every person who is working currently, is in medical school or is probably has graduated and is still trying to figure out one thing or two, it just tells us that we should stick to it. We should just keep showing up as much as we can every day. It all makes sense in the end. And congratulations, you have such an amazing and impressive profile. It's taking a lot of hard work and dedication to get here. And on behalf of the IFUMSA community and on behalf of the IFUMSA Alumni Network, we are super proud of everything that you have accomplished, sir.
Thank you.
Well done. So I want us to also talk about a topic that is on the mind of so many IFUMSA and alumni members, and that is the decision to move abroad, or what we will typically term as JAPA. It's a massive step, and it's a huge decision in the life of everybody, like anybody who decides, like who finishes medical school and then decides to take that massive step to, relocate to a completely new environment and start there. Can you walk us through like the eureka moment that led you to decide to relocate? At what point did you decide, okay, I want to change environment, I want to move to the UK, I want to move to the US? What informed your decision to travel out?
Yeah, thank you. So after medical school, even during housemanship, which I think at that time wasn't usually the norm, I and a couple of my friends, we already like applied to the primaries. I think West Africa College of Physicians don't allow you write their primaries while you're an house officer or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I think the National Postgraduate College of Medical, National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria would allow you to write your primaries so you can enter residency training maybe afterwards. So we're like, yes, let's just give it a try, since you just need just one primary to like enter residency, right? So I wrote the primaries of the national primaries, as we call it, while in my first few months of house job, and I passed that. Why I say that is I was actually planning to do residency in international medicine in Nigeria as soon as I was done with NYC. But yes, in terms of eureka moment, I would not say there was one single one. I would say it's like a cumulative eureka moments, like several of those moments. Again, like I said, I always look back with appreciation at the training I received from teachers in Ife. But the things are different when you are practicing as a doctor, even as a house officer, compared with when you are a medical student. The responsibilities are different. Your outlook and what you see and experience in the actual getting patients better is a bit different. And a lot of it is really, really rewarding. And unfortunately, as the reality of life, some parts of it can be disappointing as well. Like I said, wanted to learn more about like cardiovascular research, wanted to learn more about internal medicine, but also realized that it might be better if I had like a world view of things, so that I might then sometime in the future be able to contribute whatever knowledge and skills I have to building my environment or my home country. The good thing is that I already have my MBCHB from Ife, and no one can take that away from me. But I felt that it was potentially time to venture out and see how things are done elsewhere and what different ways things can be done back home. Because again, if you don't see any difference, there's no way you can effect those differences or those changes. And so after I finished house job, I then went to NYSC in Anambra State, and there I made a plan to write the PLAB exams as well. And basically, I think that's just it. And so I wrote the PLAB exam, and then the rest again is history.
Oh, fantastic. I love the idea of exploring, venturing, exposure, and that's one of the reasons why we keep having these programs at IRC, because quite frankly, you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know. And this just again reminds us that there's so much out there for us to expose ourselves to, and we have to take proactive steps. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So I really want us to get into some discussions about how to anchor ourselves, because I mean it's no news. We all know that like medical school, medical journey, the journey in healthcare generally is like a big deal, and it's sometimes like you mentioned, people struggle, right? I've struggled. I've had my own fair bit of setbacks, and sometimes it's overwhelming to deal with all of this. So, I mean, on dealing with failure, dealing with setbacks, disappointment, what advice would you give to students and even doctors who are not where they want to be, or are maybe struggling with clarity for their future?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And I know that's a very, very important question because, and specifically to us as doctors and maybe medical students as well, like many of us come from these backgrounds or from different secondary schools all over Nigeria, having been like the best in each of our secondary schools, having been like the role models in terms of educational achievement in our different secondary schools all over the country. And then we get to medical school, specifically we get to Ife, and then things start to change. And it's usually like very tough, especially because most people in medical school have been high achievers all their lives, and so it's usually very tough. And I've seen this play out. I've seen this, unfortunately, in close friends as well. So I think like failure is part of life, and setbacks and disappointments are unfortunately necessary part of lives. And I don't want to sound like the typical motivational speakers, but yeah, this is something that does happen to people, and it's part of being human. I think one of the things I've learned over time is how people deal with the setbacks and failures is really what matters the most. And that's where the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset potentially plays in or comes into play. I think that when an event that we typically define as failure or setback happens, there is always the period of shock. There is always the period of denial, of anger. And I think that we should let those happen naturally because they are just like normal to happen. And they are normal responses to such stressful situations. And it's also very normal to take a step back at those times. Maybe go back into some time in privacy. But beyond those initial parts of things, I think the next step would be to identify that these failures don't necessarily define us as persons, and they are just like a part of the journey, like they are a part of the growth curve, albeit a very unpleasant part of the curve, but maybe sometimes might be a necessary part of the curve to like propel us to something even greater. So my advice in those circumstances would be to take a step back, but not completely leave the stage of things. Like take a step back, talk to people who you know care about you, and people who are rooting for your success. Something I've noticed is that people sometimes even run away from such people because they feel a sense of disappointment from those people. But oftentimes, that's not the case. People are actually hoping to be helpful in as many ways that can potentially be. And I would say make good use of that. The next step would then be to re-strategize about what to do next. And that's where the growth mindset comes in. Sometimes failures happen or setbacks and disappointments happen, and there's really nothing you could have done to prevent it. But several other times, taking a step backwards and like looking through things with a clear mind, we might be able to identify one or two things that we may be able to work on and maybe improve on. And that's the growth mindset. So I think for every setback, ideally, we should identify what we can work on and what we can do better, and not blame ourselves and stay in that area. Thankfully, I've seen many people overcome setbacks and disappointments and do really, really great things for themselves in medicine and even outside of medicine, if it comes to that. I've seen people really, really succeed in doing what they want to do outside of medicine and even in medicine, despite having suffered setbacks. So they definitely do not define you as a person. It's just an unfortunate patch that we need to work through.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to the aspect of talking to people who are rooting for you. I do remember when I found myself in a situation like that, and I reached out to you back then, and you were ever so kind and happy to get on a call and provide guidance, and those insights and counsel shared has helped me to bounce back and eventually formed like the principles that I eventually built my comeback on. So yes, 100%, I agree. Reach out to people, take a step back. Don't completely disappear from the stage, but take some time to reflect and also strategize on how to do better. And quite frankly, yes, 100%, not letting the situation define who we are and become our identity. There's definitely always something in front, even better than whatever it is that happened in the past. Thank you so much for sharing that. That felt super vulnerable and touching at the same time. So to the alumni members who are currently listening, of which you are a part of our alumni community, how do you think alumni can meaningfully stay connected to IFUMSA beyond just donations, and what are the most valuable things or ways they can do or things they can do to pay it forward to the next generation of healthcare professionals?
Yeah, so I think this is like a good point to thank you and the rest of the team for putting something like this together. And I like the fact that you're saying something in the sense of beyond financial donations. What else can the alumni do? One thing that being out of medical school for 10 years now, or almost 10 years now, has taught me is the power of networking. So I think that beyond donating to the college, which is very important, and to IFUMSA, I think the other thing that we can do as the alumni body is to be there to network with current IFUMSites, and also provide mentorship as much as we can to as many people who are interested reasonably. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys putting all of this together, and I'm glad we were finally able to find a time that works. I think something like this is really important so that when you're in the middle of an experience, sometimes you can think that you're the only one going through it. But the truth is that many people have gone through what you're going through right now, especially as a medical student, and have potentially been in a similar situation as you are right now. So seeing that person or those people emerge on the other end might be enough motivation for a lot of people, actually. So yeah, helping people connect with alumni, either as one-to-one mentorship or on a program like this, is really important as well. And I really appreciate the newsletter we get as well. I think it helps us to stay informed of what's going on back home in IFUMSA. Yeah. So paying it forward to the next generation is about mentorship, is about networking, connection, and there are people with different interests. There are alumni who are doing great things in the field of artificial intelligence and medicine and really succeeding. There are alumni who are in the field of arts performing arts as well, or literature, or politics, or publishing, or sports, and things like that. So there are people everywhere, all over the globe, like doing great things, both in and outside of Nigeria. And I think that the alumni body is like an untapped wealth that can really help our student body. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Quite frankly, we are super grateful with the student community. We are super grateful to our alumni members. I mean, you're with us here on this episode of our podcast series, and these opportunities, the fact that you say yes, alumni members say yes. This year alone, we've had multiple programs, we've had webinar series with at least 4 of our alumni members. We've had mentorship circles. We're still exploring more rooms for mentorship and collaboration and networking. And you all are ever so kind and open and accommodating. And we could not possibly express our level of gratitude for how you open your doors to us and you share your stories, you share your journey. These things inspire us in ways that we may never be able to fully express, knowing that, someone who once walked the same halls that we are currently walking in, someone who was probably taught by the same people that are currently teaching us is going out there and they are doing fantastic things from IFUMSA to the entire globe, to the entire world. It gives us the courage and the audacity to look beyond just what we can see around us to what is infinitely possible. So thank you so much for paying it forward with the next generation of healthcare professionals. So we are going into the closing act, and in this closing act, I want to ask a very, very fun question. So I don't know if you watch superhero movies, but you are a dad to young boys, so I think that's inevitable. But if you were a superhero, or if you could be a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Yeah, so this is not something I've thought about a lot, but sometimes when you are seeing a patient and maybe for one reason or the other, they are not able to give a good history or even describe their symptoms. And it's occurred to me more than one occasions in the past to be like, I wish I could just understand or see their mind and see exactly what they're going through so I can most efficiently help them. I know that may not sound like a superhero skill, but more often than not, when you're admitting a sick person in the middle of the night and you need to make decisions, if you had that superhero power, it would be really, really, really really helpful.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah. That is like an unexpected superhero power. Thinking something more along the lines of being able to teleport, or maybe being create like a magic sequence that can do the chores for you, or maybe invisibility cloak thereabouts. But I think that works too. That's fantastic. It would literally take a lot of work off your plate as a physician to be able to identify specifically what the problem is and how to help your patients. So that speaks to the amazing physician that you are. Complete the sentence for us. To me, a life well lived is
a life spent helping others, at the risk of sounding cliche, like a life that builds people and institutions that lasts way longer than the life that built them. To me, that's like a life well lived.
Wow, this is amazing. This is so touching. Okay, so Dr. Tansi, your insights have been so valuable. They have been inspiring. And as we wrap up this episode, what is the biggest life lesson you carry that you would want every listener, whether student or alumnus, to never forget? And this is like your last words to the IFUMSA student body and the alumni community. What's that lesson, that biggest life lesson that you encourage all of us to carry with us everywhere that we go?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is that there will always be need to sacrifice something at some point to achieve the bigger goal. And it could be really tough to decide what to let go or how to let go or even the process of doing that. And it might sometimes require rethinking and talking to yourself and asking if you've made the right decision. But yeah, that's something that's important to growth sometimes. Also, the idea again of giving more than you expect back is also something that I would recommend to everyone, to both students and the alumni community. Give more to others, give more to whatever society you find yourself in than you expect back from those people.
Wow, what a powerful message to end on, Dr. Tansi. Thank you so much for joining us. We couldn't be more grateful. Thank you for your candid, heartfelt, and deeply insightful conversation. Thank you for opening your heart, for spending your time.
Thank you.
And for sharing your truth with us. Your journey is an inspiration to us. You wanted to say something, so before I wrap up, I'll just give you this floor.
Yeah.
I mean, we would love to hear, like, are there any words you have to say to the IFUMSA Alumni Relations Committee, to anybody that is listening? Maybe you want to give a shout out to someone. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you to you and the rest of the IR team for putting this together. Thank you for thinking about doing this, and thank you for putting it together and inviting me to talk about these things that I enjoy talking about. And yeah, I wish you guys success in your academics and in everything else you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. We could not say thank you enough. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this amazing first episode of Voices and Vibes Alumni Edition. We invite you to stay with us as we continue to shine a light on the incredible path of our esteemed alumni. Be sure to subscribe to our streaming platforms, give us a like or a thumbs up, share this episode to help us reach more people. And do let us know in the comments what topics you would love us to explore in future episodes or guests you would love us to host. Until next time, keep chasing your dreams, keep sharing your stories, and remember that the legacy of IFUMSA lives on in each and every one of us. I remain your host, Amarachi Godfrey Wankwo. Until next time, goodbye.